Good evening and welcome. We're going to try again. We had a little feedback there, but we've, I think, fixed that problem. Good evening and welcome to this regular meeting of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth, enabled by digital technologies most of the time. Our meeting date is Monday, April 4th, 2022. I'm Mayor Todd Kasenberg and I'll call this meeting to order. I ask the clerk to note our starting time for the minutes is 7 p.m. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe peoples. We wish to recognize the long history of Indigenous peoples in Canada and show our respect to them today. We recognize their stewardship of the land. May we all live with respect on this land and live in peace and friendship. Tonight's meeting is being streamed live on the Municipality of North Perth YouTube channel and will be available there after the meeting as an archived video. Anyone who is invited to speak will be recorded and their voice, image, and comments will form part of the live stream. The chair and/or the clerk have the discretion and authority at any time to direct the termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances when deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory, or potentially inappropriate to be published. Thank you. Welcome to those who are joining us via the YouTube channel. Welcome to councillors, staff, and delegations who will or may participate in this meeting tonight. I invite you to quorum over the course of the meeting. I advise that I have attendance regrets from Councillor Andries. Let us move to item 2.1 of our agenda pertaining to pecuniary interest. For the benefit of those unfamiliar with our council practices, provincial legislation requires councillors with the potential pecuniary or financial interest her or himself from consideration and voting on the item. In accordance with recommended protocols, this time I invite all councillors with pecuniary interest, including those who have declared in writing ahead of time, to verbally advise the chair in public session, and if not already done, to submit documentation to this effect in writing to the clerk. Councillors are further reminded that should a potential conflict arise during the meeting, they may so declare and act at any point in the meeting. Let us begin tonight with the declarations ahead of the meeting. First, Councillor Anstead. Welcome, Councillor Anstead.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. This evening, through you, I'd like to declare a pecuniary interest on item 5.5.1, the accounts, specifically the daycare, as my son attends the St. Mary's daycare, and also on item 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Anstead. Next up is Councillor Behrens. Welcome, Councillor Behrens.
Good evening, Council. Through you, Mayor Kasenberg, I will declare a conflict of pecuniary interest on 5.5.1, the accounts, as I have grandchildren attending the North Perth Spinrite Child and Family Center, as well as after-school programming. In addition, 8.2, the Reed Municipal Drain, as I have family members assessed on that drain, and subsequent to that, 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Councillor Behrens. Next up is Deputy Mayor Kellum. Welcome, Deputy Mayor.
Good evening, Council and Mayor Kasenberg, and through you, sir. Yes, I would like to declare pecuniary interest on item 5.5.1 as well, specifically the counts pertaining to the daycare, as I have grandchildren that attend both centers. As well, Perth Metals, as my mother and father-in-law are tenants there, and then subsequently 13.1, the confirmatory bylaw. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Kellum. Are there any other councillors who wish to make a declaration at this point? Okay, so at any point in the meeting, should you need to make that declaration, just draw my attention. To explain our virtual processes tonight, I'll be systematically trying to seek consent from various councillors as movers and seconders of the various resolutions and bylaws that are put before us. I will do this to some degree alphabetically. Should a councillor not wish to respond to the request, they may say so, and I will move to the next name on the alphabetical list. Regarding speaking to our business, councillors tonight will identify themselves through our conferencing technologies chat function. The clerk is assisting me tonight in maintaining the speaking order from that source. Councillors are allowed on their turn to deliver a primary question or comment and may make one supplemental. We will follow speaking order carefully, and any councillor wishing to have another supplemental will have to indicate again and go to the bottom of the list. This is a normal process consistent with Robert's Rules of Order. Councillors, you are asked to generally maintain a mute state in the web conference until I recognize your right to the floor. If, when I do so, recognize I don't hear you because you are muted or having some technical difficulty, I will advise. Should technical difficulty be the cause, support will be coming your way from our IT team, and I will, after reasonable pause, call on our next speaker coming back to you when you are next available. Should any of your votes not show up in eScribe, our voting technology, I will call on you when things do seem stalled to register a manual vote. At that time, take yourself off mute, answer yes or no on the motion, and then return to mute. Regarding item 2.2 of our agenda, I have a motion before me for the adoption of the agenda for tonight's meeting that reads as follows, that the agenda for tonight's meeting be approved. Councillor Ansted, will you serve as our mover for this one tonight?
Yes, I would move that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this one? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to item 3 on our agenda, the so-called consent agenda. These items are placed on our agenda because they are believed to be non-contentious, yet they require council's recognition and or action. Grouping them expedites our business. However, any councillor wishing to extract an item from the consent agenda for discussion, debate, or individual action may do so. There are 9 items on our consent agenda tonight, including the minutes of our last regular council meeting. Councillors, do any of you have a desire to extract any of these items for further discussion or action? Okay, we're not seeing any indication of same, so let's turn to the resolution recommended to us. Consent items 3.1 to 3.9 be received for information in the minutes of the March 21st, 2022 regular council meeting be adopted. Can I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our seconder here?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Let's move forward then to agenda item number 4. To enable a public meeting on land planning matters that have been included in our agenda tonight, council must temporarily recess from its regular meeting. I have a resolution that enables us to do so. It reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth adjourns at 7:09 p.m. for the purpose of public meetings under the Planning Act concerning the following. First, an application for Listle Ward Official Plan and Zoning Bylaw Amendment by Tarbush, Dickey, Giller and Associates Professional Corp., affecting property described as Lot 14, Plan 194, 650 Main Street West, Listowel. And 2, application for zoning bylaw amendment by Lavolit Limited, affecting property described as lots 43 to 45, concession 5, 6606 and 6566, Perth Line 88, Wallace Ward. Can I call on Councillor Johnston to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I would so move.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson, welcome. To you, Councillor Johnston, and to Councillor Richardson, welcome as well. Will you serve as our seconder?
I will second that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate on this? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. That means council is temporarily in recess. And now to our purpose for that recess. It's my pleasure to welcome all to a public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act for the purpose of dealing with applications made under the Planning Act. This is a statutory public meeting to deal with an application for a Listal Ward official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment by Tarbush, Dickey, Giller and Associates Professional Corp. Affecting property described as Lot 14, Plan 194, 650 Main Street West, Listal Ward, Municipality of North Perth. Correspondence, reports, and comments received regarding this application will be considered in this public meeting by council. Those in attendance remotely wishing to make comment concerning this application will be given the opportunity to do so. Anyone wishing to appeal council's decision in this matter must make verbal submission during this public meeting or have made a written submission to the council. Those wishing to receive notice of the decision regarding this application must notify the clerk via email or telephone, giving their mailing address and telephone number. At this time, I will call for a summary of this application. This will be offered by Mr. Sean Yilmaz, who is a planner with the County of Perth working on North Perth files. As always, welcome, Mr. Yilmaz.
Thank you, and good evening, Mayor Kaysenberg, members of North Perth Council. So Scott Patterson, on behalf of the property owner, Tarbush, Dickey, Giller and Associates, have proposed an official plan amendment to the Listal Ward official plan, also known as OPA 35, and an associated zoning bylaw amendment to the North Perth zoning bylaw. If approved, these amendments would permit a business or professional office as an additional permitted use on the subject property. The subject property is located at 650 Main Street West, which is at the southeast corner of Main Street West and Havelock Avenue South, which is just west of downtown. The property is currently used for residential purposes and is within the residential 4 zone. This application may sound familiar, as this was previously discussed. However, the public meeting is scheduled for tonight, so we will be just discussing it again. So I'm sorry if this does sound familiar. But the amendment would keep the lands in the residential designation and within the residential 4 zone, but add a special provision permitting a professional office to be established. The zoning bylaw amendment includes site-specific provisions and regulations to support the proposed development. Tarbush, Dickey, Giller and Associates is a local law firm that currently operates from 140 Barbara Avenue South, which is just at Barbara Avenue and Main Street, and is approximately 400 meters away from the subject property. The law firm has acquired the subject lands with the intent of moving the law firm to this location as their business expands. The current business operations include 14 staff members, which is my understanding. The subject property has an existing single detached dwelling, as I mentioned, is currently used for residential purposes, and there is a large detached accessory shed. The proposed development would replace the existing dwelling with a purpose-built office and would maintain the existing detached shed and repurpose it for use of the business as an accessory structure. If the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment are approved, no other commercial uses would be permitted, and the site can only host either the office or a residential use, not both uses at the same time. The proposal requests to preserve, the proposal that was submitted requests to preserve the residential use permission, as this was considered by the applicant as an opportunity to revert back to residential uses in the future, should the business outgrow this site, and then the demand for housing is still strong. This was also considered to be less impactful on the surrounding area. The proposed office will require site plan approval and an agreement with the municipality, as the lands would be subject to site plan control. The site plan will address items such as lighting, grading, access, and buffering from the adjacent residential lots. Staff have reviewed the application for an official plan amendment and a zoning bylaw amendment and have no concerns with the proposed additional land use permission. The provincial policy statement speaks to directing growth to settlement areas and encourages employment uses to be located in proximity to compatible uses in major good movement corridors. The property is located on Main Street, which hosts several types of land use along its corridor. Similar employment uses are found within older single detached dwellings along Main Street and are located within close proximity to the subject site. As the property is in the residential designation, and the proposal is to keep the property in this designation, OPA 35 would essentially add a special policy which would consider the professional office as a permitted use, but while also permitting residential uses on the site in the future. Section 5 of the Listowel Ward official plan provides specific policies for residential uses and permit home occupations or neighborhood commercial uses. However, the proposal for a professional office does not specifically fit in with either of these uses. Home occupations are smaller scale and may permit a small office for one of the residents in the home, whereas neighborhood commercial uses are uses that supply convenience goods and professional services, and personal services for the neighborhood. This could be a convenience store, for example, or a hairdresser. A business or professional office use is normally permitted within the central commercial designation or the highway commercial designation of the Listowel Ward official plan. The subject property is located between both of these designations, with highway commercial uses located to the west on Main Street and central commercial uses located to the east, also on Main Street. The Listowel Ward official plan encourages the improvement, refurbishment, and redevelopment of the existing properties to accommodate central commercial uses, whereas new highway commercial type development is encouraged through infilling, redevelopment, and conversion of existing uses. As this proposal is an improvement and redevelopment of an existing site and is considered an infill development, staff feel that the OPA and ZBA are consistent with the Listowel Ward official plan. Now, as I mentioned, the property will remain in the residential 4 zone, but include site-specific provisions permitting the additional office use, while also capturing the existing site conditions. The property is quite large and can support the proposed office when using the zoning provisions of the highway commercial zone and or the central commercial zones, for example. Setbacks are ample and are consistent with the C1 and the C2 zones, and the parking requirement would be met based on the conceptual plan submitted with the application. However, as I noted, a site plan agreement pursuant to the provisions of Section 41 of the Planning Act is required for this development, at which time the zoning requirements will be further evaluated for compliance. As such, it is staff's recommendation that Council approve OPA 35 and the associated zoning bylaw amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yilmaz. At this time, I'm going to ask about provision of information regarding the notice of this public meeting. And I believe that's the clerk that I call on, or should I call on Mr. Yilmaz? Oh, Sean, okay. Mr. Yilmaz, can you advise us about appropriate notice of public meeting?
Yes, absolutely. So it was confirmed that notice was placed on the property describing tonight's meeting, as well as sent via regular mail to all properties within 120 meters, also providing information about tonight's meeting, and it was also posted on the North Perth website.
Thank you. Next is with regards to correspondence, comments, and reports received about this application. Why don't we start with you, Mr. Yilmaz?
So I am aware of 2 pieces of correspondence that have come in objecting the proposal. These were also provided to council. The concerns were stated in the objection letter, which spoke to the site not being designated for residential uses, or excuse me, for commercial uses.
Otherwise, we have had no comments or reports from other agencies or parties that would typically weigh in on this application.
Yes, correct. No other reports, sir.
So read back to the clerk, because one of the items was received, I believe today, or at least distributed to council today. I think the clerk should probably read that into the record of this public meeting. So let me just adjust my audiovisual settings, and I will take over just one moment.
Thank you, and through you, Mayor Kaysenberg. As mentioned, we did receive 2 pieces of correspondence. The first letter was from Mr. Douglas W. Pratt, and that was circulated with the agenda package and posted publicly on our website. The second piece of correspondence was received earlier today. It was circulated to members of council, but since it wasn't included in the agenda package, I will read it out for the record. So this letter is from Darren Bessie and Heather Brewer, and the comments are as follows. We object to the proposed North Perth official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment referenced above. We agree with and support the arguments against this proposal put forth by Douglas Pratt in the attached document. In particular, the property is located in an area that is a stable and mature residential neighborhood. The proposed rezoning to allow a business or professional office is not compatible with the residential area. Also, it is our understanding that North Perth's own master growth plan indicates that there is no need for additional commercial property because there are existing commercial lands that are available for the proposed use. Further, it seems like the County of Perth has indicated that there should be a policy framework so that non-compatible uses are limited or prohibited, as in this situation. We feel strongly that there should be more careful consideration of the proposed amendment from a planning perspective. We would hate to see this become a slippery slope for commercial interests in established residential neighborhoods. And those are the comments.
Thank you, Clerk Klein. All right, so now we have the opportunity for those who are in attendance to make comments. And I'll call first on those who are in favor of this application, other than the applicant, to speak at this time. Clerk Klein, have we had any pre-registrations for that purpose? We have not. Okay. Next, then, those who are opposed to this application are given the opportunity to address this public meeting. Clerk Klein, do we have anyone who is on? Okay, we do not, according to. And next, we have the opportunity for the applicant or the applicant's agent, both believe who are on with us tonight, to present to council. So perhaps what I'll do is I'll turn to the agent first, Mr. Patterson. And Mr. Patterson, did you wish to make comments to this council about this application?
Good evening, Mayor Kaysenberg, members of council, staff, and the public. Naturally here again tonight in full support of the staff report and recommendation. Would like to thank Sean for walking you through the proposal and speaking to the 2 correspondences that were received regarding their objection to this proposal. I'm basically here to answer any questions that council may have tonight as a result of that correspondence, but naturally here in full support. And I'll leave it at that tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. I note also that Mr. Dickey is with us. Mr. Dickey, did you wish to address this public meeting?
Evening all. No, I think unless there are particular questions that you need me to answer, I'll let the materials speak for themselves for now. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So we have no others except the opportunity for council to ask questions. Council, your questions or comments at this point are welcome. Okay, last call for questions from council before we end this public meeting. Let's turn to Councillor Behrens first. Councillor Behrens.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg. I'm just curious, Sean, if you could elaborate a little bit. You mentioned that keeping the residential designation in the R4 zone would have less impact than simply making it commercial. Can you explain that perhaps a little? Thank you.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you for the question. So essentially, the site would host an office, but would not be permitted to host any other type of commercial use. For example, if we were to place the property into a highway commercial zone or a central commercial zone, then the property could be used for various types of other uses. For example, in the highway commercial zone, a gas station might be permitted. That would not be the case on this property. It would be specifically exclusively for the use of a professional office or residential uses. And at this point, the property owners would establish the professional office, but if they find a need to move sites, then it would either remain as a professional office or it would go back into a residential use.
Great, thank you. Councillor Rothwell, you're next.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd, and thank you, Sean, for your report. I'm wondering if you could address a couple of the points that were in the letter from Bessie and I've forgotten her name. Anyways, regarding the issue of the master growth plan and the statement that there's no additional commercial lands are required, can you address that, please?
Sure. I'm not aware of which part of the master growth plan they are referencing. We have had commercial lands need study previously, which did suggest that some additional lands may be required. But for what they are referring to, I cannot speak directly to that.
Okay. Further, there's a question for you, Sean, and perhaps Scott Patterson could elaborate. The letter talks about this being a mature residential area. Is the existing site, does it currently have commercial use within the garage portion, or can you speak to the previous commercial use of this property, please? Thank you.
I am not aware of a commercial use currently being operated in the accessory structure, and I don't have much background on the history of the site other than what I've read, but I don't know any history on the previous existing commercial uses.
Councillor Rothwell, if you don't mind, I'm going to call CAO Snell into this because I think that he probably has a few answers that might be useful. CAO Snell?
So certainly in reading the letters of objection, and I certainly, I'm not sure if they're referring to the North Perth Master Growth Plan from 2012 or the update done in 2014. However, the County of Perth growth study that was recently done in 2020 for the official plan update does state that the municipality of North Perth will require 36 hectares of employment lands to be added to our inventory for the next 20 years. So of course, employment lands do include both industrial and commercial uses. And although I don't have an official document, but I understand in talking to BIA staff is that there is not many vacancies within our downtown core area at present. That was one of the reasons why the BIA did not proceed with the Witness Space campaign coming out of COVID. As far as the history of the property, I do have some previous knowledge that prior to probably zoning bylaws and official plan policies, there were some historical uses of sort of what I would call maybe a mixed use of some minor commercial operations at that site dating back a number of years.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rothwell, did you have anything further? I'll give you the opportunity.
Thanks very much. My understanding is that Donnegan's College started at this site, so there was significant use of the site for a number of years. And at the last application, I recall that came on this site as outlined in Mr. Pratt's letter for an official plan and zoning bylaw for a automotive sales establishment. At that time, the documentation showed that the storage building, the accessory building, was used for storing tires that were for sale. That's what I recall. Perhaps Mr. Patterson can confirm that through his client. But my last point will be, as I understand, no members of the public that are immediately surrounding the site have expressed issues of concern. Is that correct?
Mr. Yilmaz and then maybe Clerk Klein, but Mr. Yilmaz, your knowledge base here is that
I'm not aware of where the second piece of correspondence where they live, but I have not heard from anybody who has contacted us saying they are a direct neighbor of this property.
okay, I'm going to ask Ms. Klein to comment too. Just let me.
Through you, Mayor Kasenberg, I haven't heard from anyone other than the two pieces of correspondence as previously mentioned.
Okay, so I think
Thank you very much.
Yeah, that addresses that question. Very good. Mr. Patterson or Mr. Dickey, did you have any other comments about this property and its history? Because it seems that there's a question about history that that we've loosely touched on, but perhaps you have more insight.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. Yeah, just to add to Mr. Rothwell's questions and comments, he is correct. This site was originally the location of Dunnigan's College. This is where their business operations actually started, and they grew up there. In 2011, as per Mr. Pratt's letter, there was an application before council to change the designation and the zoning of the property to a commercial designation and a commercial zoning to allow automobile sales establishment. And at that time, that was actually supported by council as well. It did not proceed due to an appeal being filed. So the applicant at that time dropped the application and it did not proceed. I was going to add as well to what Mr. Snell spoke of, the documents that are referenced in the letters by the two neighboring residents are somewhat outdated. They do reference the master growth plan from 2011, 2012. As Mr. Snell noted, there was a more recent update done in support of the county's new official plan, which clearly notes that additional commercial lands are required. So I just want to give council that knowledge that some of the documents that are referenced in this correspondence is somewhat out of date.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions or comments from council? Okay, well, I'll read the statutory statement here. Notice of the decision of council will be given in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. Council's decision is subject to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. And that brings this public meeting to a close. Next up, we have one more council. We have another Planning Act public meeting. Welcome to this meeting that is pursuant to the Planning Act. This is a statutory public meeting to deal with an application for a zoning bylaw amendment by Lavalit Limited affecting property described as lots 43 to 45, concession 5, 6606 and 6566, Perth Line 88, Wallace Ward, Municipality of North Perth. Correspondence, reports, and comments. received regarding this application will be considered by council. Those in attendance remotely wishing to make comment concerning this application will be given an opportunity to do so. Anyone wishing to appeal council's decision in this matter must make verbal submission during this public meeting or have made a written submission to council. Those wishing to receive notice of the decision regarding this application must notify the clerk via email or telephone, their mailing address and telephone number. At this time, I will call for a summary of this application. And again, Mr. Yilmaz is with us from the County of Perth as our North Perth planner. Mr. Yilmaz, to you.
Thank you again. La Violette Limited have applied to amend the Municipality of North Perth zoning bylaw as a condition of County of Perth application for consent B4921, which is a surplus farm dwelling severance and has been provisionally approved by the County of Perth. The property has been approved for a land severance to create an individual lot of record consisting of one existing single detached dwelling, which has been deemed surplus, while retaining the agricultural lands, which consists of farmland. As a condition of the surplus farm dwelling severance, the zoning bylaw amendment must limit the use of both the retained and severed lots. The retained lands are approximately 66 hectares or 163 acres and will remain in the agricultural zone, but placed into the A-62 zone. The A-62 zone prohibits the establishment of any new residential dwelling on the property. The severed lands are approximately 0.3 hectares or 0.75 acres and will be placed into the A-1 zone. This zone limits use to one single detached residential dwelling and accessory uses. The severed lot contains an existing dwelling, septic, and well. The surplus farm dwelling severances are a permitted form of severance through the provincial policy statement. And this is just one of the conditions of the consent. As such, it is staff's recommendation that North Perth Council approve the application for a zoning bylaw amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yilmaz. At this time, can you provide us with any information related to the notice of this public meeting?
Yes, thank you. So notice was provided through regular mail to all properties within 120 meters. A sign was placed on the property and 20 days before tonight's meeting, and notice was also put on the North Perth website.
Thank you. And further, I'll ask at this point with regards to any correspondence, comments, or reports from other agencies or stakeholders received for this application.
I am not, sorry?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, I am not aware of any correspondence that has been received.
Thank you. I'm going to redirect to the clerk just to make sure that we haven't received any here either. The clerk is nodding no. We've received no additional and indicating verbally no in the council chamber that no additional correspondence has been received. All right, that brings us to the part of our meeting where we may open things up to those who are in attendance for the purpose of offering a comment. First, those in favor of this application other than the applicant, should they wish to speak. Are we aware of any who have petitioned for the purpose? Okay, no, the answer is no. Are there any who wish to speak who are opposed to the application? Clerk is indicating no in the chamber. Next, representation from the applicant or the applicant's agent. Have we received any indication of interest in taking the opportunity of that? Again, the clerk is indicating no. At this time, then, council questions and comments are open to you if you wish to ask them. Please queue up in the usual fashion. Anyone have a question? Comment? Okay, we're not seeing any indication of that, so let me provide the usual statutory statement that notice of the decision of council will be given in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. Council's decision is subject to appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. And that brings to a close that public meeting. This time then, council, I have a resolution recommended to us to bring us out of our recessed state and back into regular council. It reads as follows: that public meetings for the purpose of the Planning Act applications is now adjourned at 7:40 p.m. The council reconvenes into regular open council. Councillor Rothwell, will you serve as our mover for that?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. And Councillor Seiler, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to both of you. I don't forget to say that. Any discussion or debate on that? We're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And we're missing one.
I'm not seeing a vote from Councillor Johnson.
Okay, Councillor Johnston, what say you?
I'm in favor.
There we go, it's shown up too. Okay, thank you very much. That means, council, that we are back in our regular open council session. And now we have a whole bunch of business to do with regards to the matters that we considered in the public meetings. First up, let's consider item 4.1. I have a few items here. I have a resolution before me that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the application for an official plan amendment, OPA 35, and a zoning bylaw amendment affecting property described as Lot 14, Plan 194, 650 Main Street West in the Listowel Ward. The proposal is consistent with the Provincial Policy Statement 2020 and conforms to the policies of the County of Perth official plan and the Listowel Ward official plan. Can I call on Councillor Anstett to be our mover here?
Yes, I would move that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Behrens, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate on this? Are we seeing any quick line? We're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Next up then is a bylaw related to the Listowel Ward Plan. It's bylaw 53-2022, being a bylaw to amend the official plan for the municipality of North Perth, Listowel Ward, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed, and said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. And I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for this one.
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And now the third item, which is related to the zoning bylaw amendment, reads as follows: that bylaw 54-2022, being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 6-ZB-1999 as amended, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed into said bylaw, be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our mover?
Yes, I would move that.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson, will you be our seconder?
I'll second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? We're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Let's move on to item 4.2. At this point, I have, I guess, two resolutions. Yes. The first as follows: the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approved the application for a zoning bylaw amendment affecting property described as lots 43-45, concession 5, 6606, and 6566, Perth Line 88 in the Wallace Ward of the Municipality of North Perth. The proposal is consistent with the provincial policy statement 2020, conforms to the policies of the County of Perth official plan, and meets the provisions of the North Perth zoning bylaw. Can I call on Councillor Rothwell to be our mover for this?
Yes, I so move.
Thank you. Councillor Seiler, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I'll second that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate, council? We're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. And next up then is the bylaw, which amends the zoning bylaw as follows. Bylaw 51-2022 being a bylaw to amend bylaw number 6-ZB-1999 as amended, be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time, and be finally passed. And said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of incorporation. Can I call on Councillor Anstead to be our mover for that?
Yes, I would move that. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, will you serve as our seconder?
Yes, I would second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you. Thank you, Council. And to those who have come on as delegates, thank you for your presentations tonight and support in helping Council with open public meetings on these matters. Let us move forward then to item 5, reports from departments and key staff. For item 5.1.1, the CAO is bringing forward a proposition to undertake what I'd like to call a days of action initiative or plan to drive consultation with the broad array of potential stakeholders for the purposes of expanding supply of affordable and attainable housing, with some focus on additional dwelling units on existing lots. Council is asked to endorse implementation steps for a 3-stage effort that includes research, dissemination of findings and reports that will stimulate thinking and discussion and the holding of a housing summit meeting. Call on Mr. Snell, our CAO, to share more about this proposition. Welcome.
Thank you and good evening, Council. Early in the year, Council received an outline or current actions on affordable housing initiatives so far undertaken in North Perth. Those included the development charges, the North Perth Community Hub, the Community Safety and Wellbeing Plan, as well as the recommendations from the Mayor's Task Force. The Task Force had some short-term recommendations, including a study of affordable housing, hosting educational awareness campaigns, the appointment of an affordability coordinator, and the forming of a permanency advocacy group, as well as long-term solutions such as densification, allowable accessible accessory units, providing incentives, applications, and using municipally owned land for development, and actively seeking county, provincial, and federal funding. Certainly, as Council is aware, the province did enact Bill 108, the More Houses, More Choices Act, which did really allow and authorize the use of additional dwelling units. So staff is really proposing sort of a 2-pronged approach in the short term. One would be, as the Mayor said, sort of a summit, which would include some public consultation using Your Say North Perth and social media, as well as hard copies, and sharing information with developers, looking at some of the recommendations of the task force, as well as presenting a housing summit that would deliver sort of that information back to the community, and really gaining some specific and hard data on who would be interested in partnering in affordable housing projects and the possibility of ADUs. In the meantime, additional dwelling units are one of the most affordable forms of rental housing because they take use of existing stock. They can be designed so a unit is either contained within a new or within an existing residence or an accessory building, or perhaps even purpose-built accessory building. Certainly, we would need to maintain or ensure all our planning policies are currently up to date, and the building code and other relevant legislation can be brought into the fold. One of the things that we would do as staff is develop a policy framework and educational program to go along with the development of ADUs using the Ministry of Municipal Affairs guide that was presented along with this presentation tonight. So certainly ADUs are just one of the tools in the toolbox, and we would looking to make more recommendations and solutions coming out of the Housing Summit that would include some of those long-term recommendations brought forward by the task force. And we certainly will continue to work with senior levels of government, including the County of Perth, to address the housing issues we're facing in our communities. At this time, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that members of council may have.
Thank you, CAO Snell. Let's turn first to Councillor Kunke.
I was just wondering, how do our development charges relate to these additional residential units?
Yeah, so it would depend on exactly the structure, the amount of square footage added. My understanding, if it was existing square footage in an existing building, there would be no development charges. But if there was a separate purpose-built building, there may be, and we'd have to probably clean up maybe some of our language in our development charges bylaw. Those are the sort of things I think we need to explore further as we go down the line, because we may want to provide incentives or some development charges incentives to create ADUs.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Behrens, you're next.
Thank you, CAO Snell, for the report. And I do truly appreciate that we did get the outline ahead of time, like earlier this year, for the task force. Can you remind us, is the affordability coordinator going to be doing the bulk of the work? And is that a full-time position for like from now on, or for a year, or however long? But it seems to me that there's so many different agencies and stakeholders in this that almost the summit should be first, and then we kind of bring the other pieces together when needed. Can you comment more?
So the addition of the affordability coordinator was just a recommendation from the task force, and that position has not been included in our current budget for 2022. So we're hoping to do this with either existing staff or help of some of the staff that council has approved in the 2022 budget. So at this point, I think that's a thing. I think we can move on some of the hopefully low-hanging fruit, but I do agree that we probably do need to have the Housing Summit first as a good data collection and start point to see what are the other recommendations that from the task force that we can implement in late 2022 or possibly 2023.
And just supplemental to that, Chris, you talked about doing a study of housing affordability, and you know, in some of our print material recently for North Perth, we know how the real estate market has increased, and we've had a few updates on the rental market. Is this going to be a major housing study for affordability, or where do you see that coming in what we're trying to do? Will it be immediately after the summit or about the same time? Because we really do need some of that information to move forward.
And I think that needs to be part of our consultation with the community is what do they define as affordable and what are we seeing? And I think part of our consultation needs to be around sort of gathering stories or input from the community as to what do they deem affordable? Because certainly the traditional measure of Canadian housing and mortgage is sort of 80% of market rate, and I suspect that when we use a definition like that, we're still leaving a good portion of our population out of the conversation around affordable and attainable housing. So I think that needs to be part of our consultation and then decide from there whether we work with the county or another agency to determine what a possible affordable housing study looks like.
Okay, thank you, Julie and Chris. Councillor Seiler, next.
Thank you, Chris. I just listening to Councillor Behrens' comments there. I guess my question is, I'm just kind of lost here, but how will this all compare to what we have now in town on our Davison North, up towards where our cemetery is there? I know there's some units up there. It was run by the county. How would this compare to that?
So what we're talking about here is not supported housing or housing supplied by the county or the city of Stratford. This is actually just trying to create attainable housing for people who are working or trying to live in our community. Certainly, the housing service does provide part of the housing continuum for some of our residents, but really we're just trying to provide more housing options for our community that people could in some cases rent affordably, or in some cases own and start to have an investment in our community. That's the one thing I'd just like to add to the way I forgot to say is this report was prepared prior to the provincial announcement of last week. So again, the province has announced new legislation. We're following that legislation very closely as well. So again, the province and federal governments are still continuing to introduce legislation that's changing the conversation, although I'm not seeing anything that's going to drastically improve the housing immediately from many of the recent announcements. And however, having said that, we all know that this is certainly a provincial and national issue. And if there was an easy answer, we would have introduced it by now. So it is going to take cooperation by all levels of government as well as the community to look for solutions.
Just before calling on our next questioner, I'll advise Council that CAO Snell and I both had the opportunity to participate in a provincial government briefing and conference call about the new legislation that is being introduced and regulations that are being changed. And certainly a lot of the focus of that legislation relates to timelines and process associated with planning. Of course, some grave concerns about the performance of planning applications in the major centers, the major urban centers in Ontario, and the government's legislation really does focus the lens on those kinds of issues. But it didn't really show a whole lot of evidence of additional funds or innovative approaches with regards to actually getting shovels in the ground and things built or changed, at least from memory. So there's certainly some work to do, and the province is doing some of the things that need to get done, but most of those will have benefit in urban centers. So thank you for that question, Councillor Seiler. Councillor Rothwell, you're next.
Thanks, Mayor Todd, and thanks, Chris, for your report. Council knows the issue of housing is not, and affordability has not just happened overnight. It's certainly exponentially increased because of the huge increase in housing prices, but we have known about this issue for a long time. It's the time to act was a long time ago, but if not then now. I would encourage Chris and staff and certainly council, if you agree, that some of these matters in terms of coming forward to establish the housing forum is important to have the dialogue within our community. I truly believe that if we're going to find housing for those that are from this community and those that want to be part of this community, is that we have to acknowledge, as Chris mentioned in his report, the developers, the property owners, the homeowners here now with us. There is a need across the board for housing, and whether that's a room in a house, whether that's an additional dwelling unit within an existing dwelling, or whether that's new housing. We're coming to this at a time when house building supplies are in short supply. Anyone that's tried to get or talk to any of our building contractors know that they are running as fast as they can, and it's the issue of availability of building supplies, let alone the price. So, which is exacerbating this problem. I don't have all the answers, and I don't think any one level of government does. But not to be particularly political here, but I can assure you that reducing timelines and for review of Planning Act applications and placing fee reductions on applications that don't meet those targets is not going to get us housing any faster. Working together will, but it will take time. And those are my comments. I would encourage you, Chris, in terms of if council agrees, that we move forward with the recommendations that were clear as a bell from the Housing Task Force, which council approved, is that we need to put information into the hands of our existing homeowners to encourage and support the creation of new dwellings within existing dwellings, and or open up their an additional or an extra room in their house for those that only need a room and board. Those within our community are in desperate need of that. And those are, as Chris, using your words, low-hanging fruit that is available very quickly. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. I'll offer just a few brief comments. I think Councillor Rothwell has painted well the scenario that we are all facing, which is that there's urgent need and there's long-term need, and we have to sort of think about acting across this timeline and across the housing continuum. To Councillor Seiler's earlier point, there are places where with subsidized and supportive housing where governments are intervening and have intervened historically and directly, and certainly now we're facing slightly upstream from that in the housing continuum, the challenges of living in our community and contributing richly to our community, which is what we're seeking, I think, in all that we do, because we work to build the quality of place and the quality of life here that is second to none. So I'm grateful for the report and the suggestion of the approach that has been made. I'm really optimistic as well in this consultation, in this summit, that leads to a summit, that we will see some indication from the development community about capital they can bring and what expertise they can bring and what assets they can bring to support an affordable strategy. And so I'm hoping that we are dealing on both supply and demand sides. I really appreciated CAO Snell clarifying that, some of what this consultation is likely to do is to identify impact stories. And I think we need that. We need the sort of human realities of experience with housing and housing inaffordability in our community to make the case that will be needed with many different stakeholders to see the change that we want to see, and changes in supply and also in demand. So thank you all for that. Anyone else want to have a say on this one before we consider a resolution? Okay, I have a resolution for our consideration. It reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receive the staff report, Affordable Housing Plan, for information and support the Affordable Housing Action Plan for additional dwelling units. Can I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as seconder?
Sure will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate further to this matter? All right, not seeing any indication of that, so let's have that vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Let's move down to, thank you, CAO Snell. Let's move to item 5.2, reports from the Clerk's Department. We have no report indicated from that department tonight, so that means we can kick ourselves down to item 5.3, reports from the Programs Department. As item 5.3.1, the Programs Department brings forward a brief and early days report about the promulgation of an agreement between Canada and the province of Ontario pertaining to early learning and childcare. And this will have implications for North Perth, and there's this. I'm going to call on Ms. Amy Gango, our Manager of Programs, for earliest insight about the implications, what we know so far, and what lies ahead. Welcome, Ms. Gango.
Thank you, Mayor Kaysenberg and members of council. Yes, as everyone is aware, on March 28th, the Government of Ontario announced a new Canada-wide early learning and childcare agreement with the Government of Canada. Part of the Canadian-Ontario agreement includes lowering fees to an average of $10 per day for children 5 years and younger in licensed childcare by September 2025. We felt because of the recent announcement, we would just be able to provide what information that we do know. As Mayor Kaysenberg mentioned, it is early days and there isn't a lot of details that we've received yet, but we felt that we would at least provide you what information has come through the channels our way. We were notified of this information the same day as the province was being announced, and that was also same for our consolidated municipal service managers. So they're the ones who filter the funds down through us. So they're learning the information just as we are. However, the following day, we did start meeting and having discussions, sharing any concerns, any thoughts, or anything like that, so that our service manager is aware of the licensees' thoughts, so that when they sit at the table to ask those questions, they're advocating for us. So just with regards to Ontario's action plan, we just highlighted what this could mean for parents and childcare providers. So for parents of children 5 years age or younger, they wouldn't have to apply for the childcare fee reduction. They would be in our systems and that would automatically occur. It would be for those eligible, they would be eligible if they were paying more than $12 a day for the childcare. If their child is 5 years age or younger, or if they're 6 years old and enrolled in a licensed childcare preschool, kindergarten, or family age group until June 30th. And the other condition is that the licensed childcare provider chooses to enroll in the Canada-wide early learning and childcare system. So for childcare providers, we licensees have the option to choose to participate in the program. There is, we would need to apply for this at this stage. We don't have a lot of details about that. So we're just waiting to receive that information. If we participate, if we choose to participate in the program, we would receive additional funding to reduce our fees. There would be specific guidelines for us to follow. In the attachments, I've shared what the province has shared with us as licensees so far, but the details of the agreement are not yet revealed. So we are waiting on that. What does this look like from us from an operating perspective? There is a note that the fee reduction will be retroactive to April 1st, understanding this is going to take time for all licensees to make decisions and choose, and if they do choose to go through the application process. So should the Municipality of North Perth as licensees, our licensee centers choose to enroll in the system and be applicable and eligible, then any funds that we would be part of that agreement would be provided back to families as refunds. It's a gradual reduction, so not to mislead anybody that the $10 a day, starts April 1st. It's a gradual, so it would be 25% reduction with an additional reduction by the end of this year, and then another evaluation next year. We don't have specific details of what the rest looks like. So apologies for not having great detail, but we felt it important to at least bring what information we do have forward for council. When we get further information, we will continue to share that with individuals. I'm happy to try to attempt to answer any questions the council may have at this time, but certainly know that further information will follow as such time for council's consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Gangle. Early days, but certainly the first indicators are quite interesting, and I think council is very clear that there's lots more to come. So we appreciate the report. Council, any questions or comments for Ms. Gangle before we consider a resolution? Okay, not seeing any indication of that. So we have a resolution that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth receives this report for information with the knowledge that a future detailed report will follow for council's consideration. Can I call on Councillor Johnston to be our leader for that one?
Yes, I would move that.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson, will you be our seconder for this one?
I will second that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Last chance for questions. We're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that's carried. Thank you very much. Next up is item 5.4, reports from our facilities department. Thank you, Ms. Gangle, as always. For item 5.4.1, council is provided with a report that proposes to designate a location for a new proposed dog park and reveals interest in a second possible dog park with more details to come in our community. I'll ask North Perth Manager of Facilities Jeff Newell to comment on his report and its recommendation. Welcome as always, Mr. Newell.
Good evening, Mayor Kaysenberg and members of council. Before you is a report regarding the selection of a dog park facility in North Perth. As far as background information, in the fall of 2021, municipal staff began working with a number of volunteers who had expressed an interest in developing a dog park in North Perth. Since that time, we've been following a pre-described number of steps, and we're at the point now where the group has made a choice as far as a selection, and this would be at step 4, is where we're currently located on the guide, and with council approval this evening would be step 5. If we had formed a number of subcommittees, and the groups were insurance, risk management, park design, fundraising, and site location. So the main group of volunteers became pared down to just a site location group, and a number of options were passed around with that site selection group. Options that were considered and eventually ruled out due to some of the criteria that we had included the decommissioned landfill site, Barnett Street adjacent to Highway 23, the Kinsman Station, and Crotts Street future park development. The Dog Park Committee is recommending the future site be located to the area north of the Steve Kerr Memorial Complex, and you'll see in the image on the screen there, it is back behind what is the soccer field at the Steve Kerr complex. The primary benefits of this site include that it is centrally located in the most densely populated area of the municipality. The installation of a fence for the purposes of a dog park is relatively easy with approximate cost of $39,000. There's ample parking and it is away from busy highways. It is also away from residential areas, so noise and light would not be a problem, and it has an appropriate surface with good drainage. It is an area that we could look at potential expansion in the future if need be, but we feel this is the best possible solution. In the process of identifying locations, the Moncton Lions expressed interest in forming a dog park in Moncton, and that was looked at by the dog park group, who, when they had done a ranking of what their preferred choices were, that ended up being the third choice. But the Lions Club in Moncton is certainly an active group with good fundraising potential, and there'll be a future report come forward with their proposal as well. But it's just something I wanted to make people aware of, that there is an interest in designing another park in the south part of that location of the municipality. Right now, there's not a lot of cost associated with this project. Just the site selection piece of it is just really staff time, my time being a liaison with the volunteers who've joined us this evening. We have Mary Pat Luddington and Doug Grant are members of the site selection committee for the dog park, and between our volunteers and myself, I'd be more than happy to answer any questions that that council may have.
Thank you, Mr. Newell, and welcome Ms. Luddington and Mr. Grant to our meeting as potential respondents to questions. At this time, I would entertain questions and first comments, and it looks like Councillor Duncan is up first.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a couple of questions for Jeff. One is regarding snow removal in the winter on the trail going back to the location, and the other is also hydro for lighting. Can you maybe elaborate on both of those?
Yes. So the first point I can comment on is we're looking at the potential of running hydro from Steve Kerr back there. We haven't heard back yet from a local contractor on the feasibility and what the cost would be associated with that. The other option is to look at, if we're doing hydro from for lighting, is to look at a solar application as well. Snow removal on that trail has not been talked about at this point, because typically in our parks, we don't do snow removals on the trails. So that may provide a bit of a barrier, but thanks for bringing that forward.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. Any other questions or first comments on this one? Okay, I'm not seeing any indication of same. So we have a resolution draft here that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the location of a future dog park development in the area north of the Steve Kerr Memorial Complex. Can I call on Councillor Johnston to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I would move that.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson, would you be the seconder?
I'd gladly second that. Thank you.
Okay, so we have a resolution on the floor, duly moved and seconded. Now, discussion and debate. Okay, well, we're not seeing any. Okay, Councillor Rothwell next.
Thanks very much, Mayor Todd. Sorry, I was a little late getting to the keyboard there. My question to you, Jeff, and thanks for the report. How far away are we from discussions with the club in Moncton regarding their desire to move forward? And if they're not included in this recommendation, when can we anticipate a further report? Thank you.
So I have been working with the Lions Club just in the last week or so. My hope is that I would have a report back probably within 2 council meetings. And it would be a similar process that I need to walk through with them to check off the items that are important to consider for a dog park and make sure that they have a solid understanding of what it takes in order to operate a dog park with volunteer stewardship and those type of things. But my intention would be to bring a report back in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you very much. I think that's time well spent. And I think it's great that the club is willing to have those discussions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone further on this matter? I'm not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is unanimously carried. Thank you very much, Council. Project has been dear to my heart from my assumption of the chair. Okay, let's turn now to, thank you, Mr. Newell, a solid report. Appreciate the process that was created as well to sort of get us to this point. And thanks to all the volunteers, including Ms. Ludington and Mr. Grant, who joined us tonight. That's good news for them as well, and look forward to the next steps.
Thank you very much, and we're looking forward to moving along with the next steps in the process, and we'll certainly be reaching out for additional volunteers. I know just even with the council agenda item today, we picked up another 2 volunteers that had heard about it on the news. So we're encouraged that way. So thank you very much, Council.
Thanks. Okay, let's move to reports from our finance department as item 5.5. As item 5.5.1, finance staff has brought forward for council review the accounts as of this day, April 4th, 2022. The account listing represents expenditures for all municipal services, including Perth Meadows operations, but does not include the incoming revenues that offset these expenses. I'll note that some councillors have declared a potential pecuniary interest in this item and will absent themselves from consideration and voting. For those who are participating, are there any questions about this matter for our staff? Okay, we're not seeing any indication of that, so let me read the resolution into the record. This is a big number. That the following summary of accounts be received by council for information. The total is $3,794,358.93. Can I call on Councillor Rothwell to be our mover for this?
Yes, I so move.
Thank you. Councillor Seiler, will you do the seconding duties here?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. That is carried 6-0 with the 3 abstentions and the 1 absence. Thank you very much. That item, that moves us down to item 5.6. We have 2 reports tonight from our Environmental Services Department. Item 5.6.1 invites council to waive tipping fees at the landfill for the annual cleanup of the Mainland River and a little bit of extra help. I'm going to invite Mark Hackett, our Manager of Environmental Services, to address this item. Mr. Hackett, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg and Council. Yes, the Middle Mainland Rejuvenation Committee has been around for a while. They're a local volunteer group. As Council is aware, they've been actively involved in many activities in North Perth in the community. Last year, with the assistance of the Mainland Valley Conservation Authority, the Middle Mainland Rejuvenation Committee members, and some Listowel District secondary school students, they planted 300 trees and shrubs out behind the Steve Kerr Memorial Complex to help create wildlife habitat, shade, and space for pollinators. And so for this year, they're planning on continuing with the annual Mainland River cleanup. They haven't done that for the last 2 years due to COVID restrictions. So they're looking forward to getting going on that. They're planning on Saturday, April 30th, with a rain date of Saturday, May 7th. And as in previous years, they are asking that the North Perth Supply truck to be able to haul out the garbage that's collected out to the Elma landfill, and that the tipping fees would be waived as they have in the past. We would advertise the details of the event on our municipal website and on social media to encourage residents to get involved in this valuable volunteer initiative. I can take any questions if there's any.
Thank you, Mr. Hackett. Council, any questions or first comments? We're not seeing any. So I have a resolution for our consideration. It reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth approve the waiving of the tipping fees landfill for the garbage that is collected from the 2022 annual river cleanup and supply a truck to haul the garbage to the Elma landfill. Can I call on Councillor Anstett to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I would move that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried unanimously. Next up, for item 5.6.2, Council is asked to award the tender for the replacement of the roof at the wastewater treatment plant admin building and garage to T. Hamilton and Son Roofing of Toronto. Again, I'm going to call on Mr. Hackett, our Manager of Environmental Services, to address this. Mr. Hackett.
Yeah, thank you again. So yes, a tender for the roof replacement, the wastewater treatment plant for the admin building and the garage was issued, and it closed on March 16th, 2022. There were 4 submissions, and as mentioned, T. Hamilton and Son Roofing Inc. out of Toronto was the low bid at $116,770, not including HST. They have met all of the qualifications that they're required to do, and after that was reviewed, they're in full compliance. So the work for this tender is to be completed by September 30th of 2022. We had budgeted $190,000 for this project in the 2022 capital budget, so it's well under that at $116,770. There are a couple of provisional items, but they're not expected to be adding up to very much if they are needed. They definitely would be nowhere near the $73,230 difference between the budgeted amount and the award amount. I could take any questions if there's any.
Thank you, Mr. Hackett. Always nice news when things come in under the expectation. Councillors, questions or first comments? Seeing none, I have a resolution for our consideration that reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth award tender NP 006-22T for the roof replacement at the wastewater treatment plant admin building and garage T. Hamilton and Son Roofing Inc. in the amount of $116,770, excluding HST. Can I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for that?
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you be our seconder on this one?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thanks. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you, Mr. Hackett. Thank you, as always, and our best to your operators and team. Let's turn to item 5.7, reports from our Manager of Operations. For item 5.7.1, on the recommendation further to a public tendering process, Council is invited to award a tender for road hot mix asphalt paving to the Murray Group in the amount of $407,884.85, excluding HST. I'm going to call on Lyndon Couch, our Manager of Operations, to address this one. Mr. Couch, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg and councillors. We had several bids on this application. It's part of our capital program for this year to do two blocks of reconstruction in the rural asphalt areas. As I said, several bidders. The low bid being recommended tonight is the Murray Group at the amount of $407,884. This is part of an overall program of just over $1 million this year, and it falls within the budget lines of the items for reconstruction that we had in front of you through the capital program. There is an AC index, an asphalt cement index that's built into this. Things have been so volatile in terms of asphalt pricing, in terms of oil, and we know that that price could escalate from this bid amount as part of that adjustment. But we don't think it's significant enough to get beyond the budget lines, and therefore the recommendation for doing the blocks with the Murray Group is in front of you tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. Questions or first comments from council? We're not seeing any, so let's consider the resolution that's been put before us. It reads as follows: that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth award tender NP-008, is it 008? Yes, -22T, hot mix pavement, North Perth line 88 and 89 to the Murray Group Limited in the amount of $407,884.85, excluding HST. Councillor Johnston, will you serve as our mover for that?
I would certainly move that.
Thank you. And Councillor Richardson, our seconder.
I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? We're not seeing any, so let's have that vote. Oh, well, no, that's exciting. That's exciting. My records are showing that it's carried. The screen is doing some strange things in the council chamber. But anyway, that's carried. Thank you. Let's turn to item 5.7.2 on the recommendation further to public tendering process. Council is invited to award the tender for the renovation of the Sheer Municipal Drain to Ron H. Williams Drainage in the amount of $218,285, excluding HST. Mr. Couch, again to help us with this one. Welcome.
Thank you again. Several bidders, so we were pleased to see that there was a good competition for it. The recommendation is for the low bidder at $218,000, Ron Williams. We're approximately 25% over the estimate that from the engineer. Again, prices were consistent from the bidders, higher than expected, but acceptable under the Drainage Act, which allows for up to 33% higher bids than what the estimates have. So we did discuss it with the engineer, and the recommendation and their letters in front of you to award to the low bidder.
Thank you, Mr. Couch. Questions or first comments from council on this matter? Okay, we're not seeing any, so let's consider the resolution before us that the Council of the Municipality of North Perth award the tender NP-009-22T for the Shearer Municipal Drain as per the recommendation from RJ Burnside and Associates Limited to Ron H. Williams Drainage Inc. in the amount of $218,285, HST excluded. Councillor Rothwell, will you serve as our mover on this one?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Councillor Seiler, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. Any discussion or debate? Okay, we're not seeing any indication of same, so let's have that vote. That's exciting stuff. He's doing strange stuff. So we have no idea how to explain it, but my records here are showing that it is carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And now that means we can turn to item 5.8, reports from the fire department. Item 5.8.1 invites council to authorize staff to enroll the municipality in the Ontario naloxone program through Huron-Perth Public Health. I'll invite North Perth Fire Chief Jenny Pape to comment. Sorry, welcome Chief Pape.
Thank you, Mayor Kasenberg. Good evening, Council. In 2018, the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care made naloxone available to fire and police services. The Ontario naloxone program is intended to prevent overdose fatalities and to protect our first responders in the event of accidental exposure. In recent months, the NPFD has responded to incidents related to opioid overdoses, and as recently as Friday, the Huron-Perth Public Health Unit circulated information regarding increased opioid overdoses within the Southwest Ontario hospital system. Naloxone training and the actual naloxone are provided free of charge through the Huron-Perth Public Health Unit through the Ontario Naloxone Program. The program provides these resources through the health unit. The costs associated with medical oversight, which would be in addition to the training that would be provided through the health unit, can be purchased at a price. It ranges between $3,000 and $10,000 per year. I'm open to any questions at this time.
Thank you, Chief Pape. Council questions or first comments? Councillor Anstead.
Thanks, Mayor Kasenberg, through you. Thanks very much, Chief Pape, for the report. Excellent initiative. Looking forward to seeing this get implemented. Just one question I did have in terms of the actual training. What's the timeline for getting all of our members trained on this? Thank you.
You're welcome. The health unit provides a train the trainer program, and so they have actually they're ahead of us. They've reached out already to see when they can get into our stations, and so I would suspect that this could be done as early as this summer. We could have everyone trained, and then in addition to that, that training's from what we're hearing from Perth County Paramedic Services. That's typically training that's provided to the general public. We'd like to go a step farther because these are our first responders. And so that's where the medical oversight would come in. And we'd collaborate with Perth County Paramedic Services on that as well.
That sounds great. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Let's have a look at the resolution then. The Council of the Municipality of North Perth authorizes staff to enroll in the Ontario naloxone program through the Huron-Perth Public Health, I should say, and to collaborate with Perth County Paramedic Service with respect to quality assurance and medical oversight to protect the public and first responders from the adverse effects of opioid exposure and or overdose. Just for fun, I'm going to reverse the order so that all those people who've been seconding all night and then they can move something. So Councillor Seiler, will you be our mover on this one?
Yes, I will. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Rothwell, will you be our seconder on this one?
Yes, I will.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. Well, eScribe continues to do its wonderful magic. I don't know that that's a good news story, but the system is showing that that is carried unanimously. Thank you, Chief Pape. Thank you for the report and pushing forward with what seems like a very important and timely program. Okay, let us move forward then to item 6 on our agenda. For item 6.1, councillors, are there any reports you would like to ask of staff or of our committees at this hour? And the usual process for drawing the chair's attention. Okay, we're not seeing anything there. So for item 7, we have received no further items of correspondence which require any action from council. Brings us to item 8 on our agenda, which allows council to consider bylaws. We have 2 of them tonight, both related to drains. And the first item, 8.1, reads as follows: that bylaw number 63-2021, being a bylaw to provide for a drainage works, the Galbraith Municipal Drain, be introduced, read, and considered read a third time and be finally passed, and that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Richardson, will you serve as our mover for this?
I'll happily move that this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Johnston, will you be our seconder on this?
Yes, I would certainly second that.
Thank you very much. Discussion or debate? I'm not seeing any, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. Thank you very much. Next up is item 8.2, also drainage. That bylaw number 131-2021, being a bylaw to provide for a drainage works, the Reed Municipal Drain, be introduced, read, and considered read a third time and be finally passed. That the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as our mover for this one tonight?
Yes, I will make that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Duncan, will you be our seconder here?
Yes, I'll second that.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried as well. Noting the abstention of Councillor Behrens as earlier identified. That brings us to item 9 on our agenda. Are there any councillors wishing leave to give notice of motion tonight? We're not seeing anything there. That brings us to item 10 on our agenda. For item 10.1, are there any announcements that would be a benefit to our community or that reflect well on North Perth at this time? Usual approach to drawing the chair's attention. I'm not seeing anything at this point. Let's move forward to item 11. We have one matter to be considered in a closed session of council. I will now read the resolution that explains and enables our action to enter closed session. The council, here's the resolution, council, that council proceed in camera at 8:43 p.m. to address a matter related to the following: a proposed or pending acquisition, find my words, a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board regarding property described as Plan 487, Lot 22, Municipality of North Perth. Can I call on Councillor Behrens to be our mover for this one?
Yes, I will make that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Anstett, will you be our seconder here?
Yes, I would second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate on entering closed session? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried. Council, at this time, then I'm going to move us and change the audiovisual settings for the purposes of a closed session meeting. Councillor, staff who've been invited to remain with us should stay on the line. Staff who have not been invited to remain for this should exit the WebEx call at this point. And I invite you to give us a few moments. Given that we're probably fairly close to the end of the meeting, I'm not going to call for a health break at this point. I think we'll just try to plow through if that's all right with council, and just give us a few moments to make this setting adjustments. Hang on. We're testing to see whether I can be heard again on the YouTube feed. Councillor Richardson, will you do our usual duties with regards to this?
Yes, sir. Just waiting for delay. Just bear with me 2 moments.
Yeah.
We're good to go.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. For item 12, I can advise that council in an in-camera session did discuss matters with regards to proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality regarding property described as Plan 487 Lot 22, Municipality of North Perth, and did give instructions to staff with regards to this matter, which at this point are confidential. That means we can move on here. Council as a mandated good practice acts near the end of its meeting agenda to confirm all of its action and business of its meeting through what is called the Confirmatory Bylaw. I have a draft of that here, which reads as follows. Bylaw number 55-2022 being a bylaw to confirm generally previous actions of the Council of the Municipality of North Perth be introduced, read, and considered read a first, second, and third time and be finally passed, and the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. And I call on Councillor Duncan to be our mover for this one.
Yes, I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Seiler, will you be our seconder on this one?
Yes, I'll second that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any discussion or debate? Seeing none, let's have that vote. And that is carried with the noted abstentions for pecuniary reasons. And that means that we've come to the magic moment, Council. We have completed the deliberations and taken action on the business that has come before us tonight. I have a motion to adjourn, which reads as follows, that the council meeting adjourns at 8:59 p.m. Just under the wire here. To meet again for general council business on Monday, April 11th, 2022 at 7 p.m. Deputy Mayor Kellum, will you serve as the mover for that?
And yes, I will make that motion.
Thank you. And Councillor Behrens, will you be our seconder?
Yes, I will second that motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's not debatable, so let's have that vote. And that is carried. That means this council will meet again for our next regular meeting, again using digitally enabling technologies on Monday, April 11th, 2022. This meeting is adjourned. Council, for another good meeting. Have a